Good morning and welcome to the annual Ancient Theatre Festival organized by the Department of Classics and Ancient History of the University of Warwick. We are delighted to be in the position to organize an annual event which schools from so many parts of the country come to enjoy together, and that we are very, very proud of. Especially since it's resulted from the hard work of our students, as you will see, and their imaginative collaboration over a number of months. So thank you for coming, and we hope that you will find the day entertaining, intellectually stimulating, and inspiring. Now, the Ancient Festival for Schools is gradually becoming one of the most important events in the departmental calendar. And as you can probably see, yes, from your surroundings in this beautiful space, and it is increasingly ambitious, both materially and intellectually. For the material ambition, we are grateful, and I need to thank now the Warwick Academic Research Committee, the Warwick Impact Fund, the Widening Participation Fund, the Warwick Innovation Fund, and the Institute of Advanced Teaching and Learning, without the financial support of which I think none of this would have been possible. Now, for the intellectual aspect, we only find it natural that the Drama Festival and the student production have evolved into the ambitious project that it is. The Department of Classics and Ancient History provides the students with ample opportunities to explore every aspect of the ancient world, from its material culture, to its history, to its political institutions, to its society and its arts. All these aspects of the classical world are hugely important to understand an event so multidimensional and so multifaceted as the theatre of the ancient world. Now, if you want to find out more about the process of putting this production together and the opportunities that it has offered the students to develop creative skills, please have a look at our production program that the students have lovingly put together, but also the Medea production blog and our dedicated website, details of which you will find in the penultimate page of the program. Now, if you are considering Warwick as a place of study, there are details for our next open days in the back cover, I have to say this. Okay, and now, before I pass over to Michael Scott, who will introduce you to Medea, let me say a few words about theatre in the Greek world to give you a context for today. Okay, so when we teach Greek culture, we present it and we teach it as performance culture. Now, what does this mean? It means that every aspect in the lives of the Greeks was associated with some sort of a public event, performance. So, I can think of dozens of events, but let's start with the festivals, which took place all year round, both local and pan-Hellenic. And such festivals, which many of them lasted several days, included all sorts of performances, from music and dance performances, instrumental performances, rhapsodic recitations, and other poetry, and all of them in a distinctly Greek way, in a competitive context, okay? Because the Greeks didn't do anything performative unless, they did it, if they didn't do it in a competitive manner. But this is, surprising for everybody, for somebody who hasn't studied, the Greek world yet. Things like philosophy and science, okay, their dissemination, their communication to the public took place also in conditions of performance. And then also we have the political life of, the ancient Greeks, the Athenians in particular, that we know very well how strong the elements of, public show and performance was in such political events. And also the trials in ancient Athens were public events, and the importance of rhetoric, being able to use speech effectively in front of a large audience, was paramount. But even the role of religion, so see how distinct the role of performance is in Greek culture. Even such an esoteric event that we would perceive today, okay, so as, religion. This also had a strong performative aspect because religion in ancient Greece has got a very strong dimension involving ritual and cult as performance. And we know of dozens of processions, for example, or that were organized as part of religious festivals, in which both spectacle and also participation were important. So now this is the wider context in which we should see the theatre of ancient Athens. So the theatre of ancient Athens is in fact part of and product also of this all-encompassing song and performance culture. And as an experience, it was very different from today's experience of going to the theatre, and very different from what we will see today, but we're hoping that we have captured important aspects of Greek theatre today in some of the dimensions of our production. So how was it different? So this is a space where, you expect to attend to a theatre performance today. And in such a space couldn't have been more different than the space of the ancient theatre festivals. Large outdoor spaces, and in the 5th century, not really architectural buildings, but part of the landscape, in fact, because stone theatres became part of the norm, became the norm only from the 4th century onwards. So part, of the landscape, which people, went to in their thousands as part of certain religious festivals that happened at certain points in the year, about which I will speak in a minute. So large outdoor spaces instead of no artificial lighting, but natural lighting, no roof, outdoor in the elements, and with a great, contact, the place themselves have got a great awareness of nature. This is actually not a theatre of Dionysus, but I use this image a lot because it kind of captures the nature element, so well. The theatre of Dionysus is this. I've used here an image from the early part of the 20th century, where you don't see all of this landscape in the back being completely built as modern Athens is now. And again, the landscape, important with the mountains and the sea on the other side. But the theatre wasn't only active in. I'll talk about this in a minute. So the contexts now. In Athens, large dramatic festivals that happened, at certain times, during the year. The most important of these, the Great Dionysia, that happened in the spring. Now this one, because it happened in the spring, it allowed sailing, so it allowed international audiences to arrive to Athens. The organization was on a massive scale, okay, and the festival itself lasted over 6 days, including religious processions, again with a huge, spectacle themselves. This is an image of a modern, it's a modern festival that happens in central Greece, and that involves, phallophoric, processions. And I use this image to depict the main Pompeii procession that happened on the very first day of the Great Dionysia. So atmosphere of the great Dionysia of Athens, you have to imagine sacrifices of hundreds of animals and the ensuing public barbecues, okay, that followed afterwards. Again, modern images from modern Greece to kind of capture the atmosphere. A huge investment of time, of course, and money. A staggering amount of money, both public and private, especially. Over 1,200 performers were involved in the performances of the great Dionysia. And what you would expect to see in those 6 days, we don't know exactly with what order, but you would expect to attend competitions, remember what I said before, okay, because drama and all sorts of performance happen in a competitive context. So competitions between large choruses, competitions between tragedies, with certain dramas at the end, and also comedies. Now, apart from the Great Dionysia, which was the big Athenian festival in the spring, we also had slightly smaller, events such as the Medea in winter. This one didn't have, such international audiences, and in this one, comedy rather than tragedy dominated. Other festivals, sometimes people think wrongly that Greek theatre was performed only once. Every Greek tragedy was produced only once. But this couldn't be, any further away from the truth, because out of these 140 townships of Attica, during the 5th century, several had vibrant dramatic festivals in which the plays that had already been shown in the main festival basically toured around the year. This is what we call the rural Dionysia, okay, or Dionysia in the townships, Dionysia in the deans, okay, Dionysia in the countryside. Extremely, unknown because, and I'll show you pictures of these theatres in a minute. Unknown because also our material evidence is not that strong as it is, for the great Dionysia. However, they were extremely important for the afterlives of these plays, and we know that some of these, the best of these plays were actually performed in these smaller theatres of the townships of Attica. And finally, abroad. Already in the 5th century, Greek theatre was exported, and already in 472 we know that Aeschylus' Persians, the oldest surviving drama, immediately, soon after its production in the theatre of Dionysus in Athens, was also produced in the theatre that I showed you before, the theatre of Syracuse in Sicily. So, all over the Greek world, the Greek theatre in the 5th century was, was a major kind of cultural medium. Okay, so the theatre of Syracuse in Sicily. Now, some of these theatres that I told you before in the townships of Attica. So one of the most impressive and best preserved, Southeast Attica, the theatre of Thorikos. I love this, because of the kind of the sea vistas that it has in the background. In the mountains of Northeast Attica, another theatre of Dionysus, the theatre of Icarium. So this is kind of, so the spatial context and kind of the festival context of the theatre. What other things do we need to know? So how did the theatre develop in Athens? So, already in the 6th century, Athens had fashioned itself as the cultural capital of Greece, so the place to be, where, if you wanted to make it in the arts, this is where you made it. So, in our textbooks, the Athenian theatre is conventionally thought to have been born in 534 BC. Then, paradoxically, I will tell you later on, Greek theatre is associated with democracy, but it was during the tyrannical regime of Pisistrates that a huge investment was thrown in Greek theatre and Greek theatre festivals. Obviously, I mean, for the obvious reason that it's kind of a very popular medium. But Athenian theatre, as I said, is intrinsically connected with democracy. It developed and it took its, the form that we know, today during massive historical, social, political developments, which led to the institution of democracy in Athens. Okay, the date is 508, and to its radicalization around 460. This is a period also of massive changes in the Greek world, because we have the aftermath of the Persian Wars, which last from 490 to 479, and then capitalizing on that and on her role in the Persian War, Athens develops now into an empire, and new external wars happen. Okay, with the booming prosperity of Athens, hence, and the growing imperialist profile of Athens, and hence we see such ideas quite often being explored in Greek drama, including also the role of wealth as part of the reason that wars are being waged. And at the same time, Greek theatre, Athenian theatre, inherits and engages with rich philosophical tradition of the Ionian philosophers, okay, the pre-Socratic, as we know them, philosophers. So from cosmology to political philosophy. So it is no surprise that 5th century theatre engages so much with the philosophy about the cosmos, which had emerged and developed, over the 6th and the 5th century, and political philosophy as well. And also another thing that we find then kind of goes into the plays quite a lot is new intellectual ideas of what we call the movement of the sophists, okay, with intense exploration of religious, philosophical, political, and social ideas. So a very rich context. So you can imagine how many levels one can explore in absolutely every single Greek play. Now, the earliest surviving tragedy, as I told you before, is Aeschylus' Persians, which is dated to 472, and two of the latest, which were produced posthumously, after the death of Euripides, but they were offered by Euripides, Iphigenia and Aulis, and the Bacchae. Now, we know only 3 tragedians, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. These are the tragedians that we are, taught. And one comic poet, Aristophanes. But we have well over 100 playwrights of tragedies and sudden drama, as well as comedies, who composed and produced theatre in the 5th century. So it wasn't, our philologists and, later scholars, and for several, reasons and with several criteria decided to preserve the triad, okay, and some certain plays by them. Also we have, survivals by accidents, but we shouldn't forget that we, at the same time, we had another 100 playwrights, many of them writing on the same level, okay, the same quality as our surviving playwrights. So now we have only 43 plays surviving, but it is estimated that at the time over 1,200 plays were produced until the end of the 5th century. So we have a 2%, really. Okay, so we have, wonderful fragments which have survived both indirectly, okay, through the work of scholars, but also directly through papyri. And we lately, scholarship has made a fantastic progress with, studying these fragments and getting to know what hasn't survived. But I mean, it is very useful to have in your back of your minds there that we basically have surviving in full only 2% of what was composed and produced. Okay, so very briefly now, because I'm coming to the end of my time that I have. So the theatres, we spoke about this. The theatre of Dionysus, as I said again, mostly part of the landscape. Okay, so everything was temporary and only built by contractors for the festivals. So wooden bleachers and wooden, stage building. This is what a theatre space would have looked like, from the point of view of the audience in the 5th century. What you would expect to see there: 2 or 3 actors, 12 to 15 strong choruses in tragedy, double that in comedy. And what these choruses do? Not speaking, okay, in this kind of boring way, the choral notes that we tend to cut when we teach Greek theatre, singing and dancing, okay, absorbing and reflecting all the song culture that was developed over, the hundreds of years before in Greece. So singing and dancing, and also singing and dancing by the characters, and there would be also the musical accompaniment by the aulus player. In terms of scenery, this is something that I will talk later on at my talk in a bit more detail. We expect that it does a minimal scenery, and very much the use of the images that are constructed with the mind. Okay, it's an oral culture, and very much things work in the imagination, which the Greeks probably had very much developed. So on this note, I will pass over now to my colleague Michael Scott. Where's Mikey? Okay, who will come and talk to you about Medea.